All right, so let's get into a 2025 Tennessee football review video. Now that the season is over, obviously our last two games that we lost was a gut punch. A gut punch is an understatement of how that made me feel. But I'm going to give you a little bit of a perspective. For one, as a former player, and granted, just a walk-on, right? I was a nobody, but I was in the locker room. And things that I could tell just over my sports career of some of the best teams I've ever been on versus some of the teams that arguably probably had more talent, but we never got the results that we wanted to. Actually got results with a lot of times less talented teams, and I'm going to explain kind of a little bit in that video. I think big-time sports people is going to kind of understand where I'm coming from. So I think the main thing, the results of the season, and I've been saying this for a long time, and it's really hard in today's college, let alone pro sports, to have a leader. Because the leader, arguably, right, it's got to be the first person in, last one to leave. You got to be feared in a way. Your Tom Brady, Peyton Mannings, they put the work in. No one outworked them. Now, were they feared physically from their teammates? No, but they were the leader, and everyone else followed suit. And if you didn't, you weren't probably going to be on the team very long. So you have those type of leaders. You also have your Ray Lewis type leaders, right? Which is intimidating, right? If you do the wrong thing, this person, you're almost fearful physically for your life to go against this guy's leader. And I feel like Tennessee dismissed it. And it would be unreasonable for me to sit here and say that I think Joey Aguilar is our quarterback coming in, and the situation he came in at was to be our leader. That's an impossible situation to come in, right, and basically in fall camp and try to take over and lead a team. I do think, and again, I don't know the guy personally. I like, to me, for what we got in the situation right there, that was the best of the best, right? I appreciate everything he done. He exceeded my expectations. I just think maybe it's just the today athlete, right? He spends more time trying to make TikTok videos than being a true leader on and off the field as far as his teammates go. Just my opinion from what I see and put together, right? I could be wrong on this. And then I think you had a few other people on the team, try to step up and into that leadership roles. And I don't even know who all was on. I think they call it maybe the leadership counselor or something like that at Tennessee. But I just don't feel that any of those people, I think they were on it to call themselves a leader. And most people don't understand what it takes to be a leader. If anything, a lot of times a leader is not necessarily liked. Because you have to make very difficult decisions, and let alone you have to be willing to, a lot of times, especially in sports, is lead by example. There's a lot of people that leads with words and leads with chirps, and then their actions don't do it. And so although people will pay attention to them and pretend they're following them when they're chirping along, at the end of the day, as soon as the huddle breaks, right, they're all like, that person's full of shit, right? I've been in those locker rooms. I know what that's like. And that's kind of what I feel is the biggest thing that lacked is we had no true leader on our team. The other thing was, our running back situation. And I said this kind of from the early get-go. I love Deshaun Bishop. I'm glad that we're going to have him here, right? To me, he's a stud running back. I'm on my team every time. Did he deserve to be the starter, in my opinion? Yes. However, I still think Star Thomas was the best running back. I said this. I remember seeing Alvin Kamara play, and I was like, oh, wow, why are we not getting this guy the ball way more? He literally can't be hit. What he has and his ability to make people miss and in the open field, you can't teach it. And to me, he was just so much better than Jalen Hurd, but we just kept feeding and Jalen Hurd the ball, kept feeding. And, of course, Jalen Hurd left, and then what happened, Kamara was awesome, and, of course, went on to probably be an NFL Hall of Famer. To me, Star Thomas was a little bit of a poor man's version of Alvin Kamara, but he had those same traits. Why the heck we weren't getting him the ball? He should have had 2 times as many touches. And I realize, all right, I'm not a coach, and you also have to play the portal game. And I realized Peyton Lewis, I think he was rated as the fastest player on the team, all that. Peyton Lewis couldn't make a cardboard box miss. I said that from the get-go. He was a waste of time. But I realized we had to play him because the coaches just wanted to try to keep him from transferring, so we had to give him carries. But man, Star Thomas, I think we had so much there. I think Star Thomas goes on and has the best NFL career out of all those guys by a long shot. I think Star Thomas has a great NFL career. It was very frustrating for me to see the way we used him all year long. And we'd use him, he'd get us down, and then we'd put somebody else in there to score the touchdown, which is fine. I don't care about that. But it's a little bit of a gut punch. I think we messed up by not using Star Thomas more in our offensive scheme all year long. The next part here is our freaking kicking field goal kicker. Don't even know the guy's name there. And I feel bad, right? That's a tough job. To me, there's probably no bigger pressure situation than for a college, let alone an SEC kicker, and at night and circumstances, games on the line. I'm not going to say I'm going to miss that kick, right? So I'm not blaming that. That is you can't practice for that situation. And as kickers, you either got ice in your vein or you don't. It's clearly our guy struggled a little bit. I've seen kickers go out and have a great year. The next year's terrible year, and vice versa, right? That's to me, kicking is much more of a mental game. I don't think you have just kickers that are significantly better than the others. It's much more mental because the ability, you're talking about people that can kick maybe a yard or two further. But when you're lined up in practice, it's a lot of it are very equal. But I don't know what we're going to do with that situation. With important kicks, it's not like we just missed a lot of them, and that arguably cost us some games, especially Georgia. Tim Banks situation. I had a little bit different opinion what most people. I know people hate on Tim Banks. In 2024 had a great defense, but offense was not great. This year didn't have a great defense. And I realized we were too bad. We were worse than what we should have been. However, Tennessee's offense, I will say this, and this is just purely from a football standpoint. When Tennessee's offense is really good, meaning we're scoring in a minute, under 2 minutes, right? There is a reason why when we score under 2 minutes, our offensive lineman gets hurt on the field goal every time. There's a reason, right? I sit here, I'll predict it every time, and 80 to 90% of the time I'm right, we got an offensive lineman hurt, right? That is to give our defense time to rest. When our offense is good and scoring that quick, and we are in a shootout, the other offense has to then try to score as well, and they're going to have tons of opportunities. And they also wear down our defense where time of possession is very key. And I think it's just kind of like my opinion. I don't know what true data, but if we're having a top 10 offense, which is, heck, we were close to it this year. We maybe had one, I don't know. It's almost impossible for us to, in return, also have a top 50 defense. So I think Tim Banks in a lose-lose, and it's kind of one of those situations of what type of defense you want to run? Do you want to run where you bend, don't break? I will say our biggest struggle this year, to me, was we could not stop anybody that was down in distance. I would rather have it down 3rd and 3, 3rd and 2 versus 3rd and 13. We never ran quarterback spies. I have no clue how you let Diego Pavie run for nearly 200 yards, basically untouched, right? He essentially didn't get touched until he was getting tackled. That is unbelievable when that is literally what makes Vanderbilt good is him. Mind-blowing. So is that scheme? Yes, right? That's probably a Tim Banks fault there. But in the grand scheme of things, right, it's when our offense is really good and how we're scoring, we are never going to have a good defense. It is essentially impossible is not the right word, but it would be almost impossible for Tennessee, the way our offense is, to put an amazing offensive year and an amazing defensive year together. If we ever did it, we win the national championship. But lose. The next part here, right, and this probably gets in back to the leadership, probably just talked about this, was bad locker room, right? So we know Boo Carter, that whole situation, right? Probably Boo's also one of those guys, I can see him with the football, kind of like that Alvin Kamara, Star Thomas, right? You can't teach what he has when he puts the football in his hands. Maybe he wants to be a defensive guy. Why he's not on the offensive side or was not put there, I don't know. To me, that's you got to have a guy like that on the offensive side. But that whole thing, how it played out during camp and him, whatever it was, missing things, right? That just creates bad locker room juju because you're going to have people that are pro Boo and see his side. And then you're going to have locker room guys that, are not, and it's black and white, and you're not doing it, and we don't want you on the team. And then the coaches allow them on the team, and there's resentment, right? So there you go from the get-go, that's a bad locker room vibe, which, again, is the difference, a difference of taking a team like Indiana. I don't know how many 4 or 5 stars they have on there. Not many. But basically, 3, 2, and 1 star, 0-star people. But the locker room and the leadership there, the fundamentals, the playing for each other, that is why they're having the success of what they're doing, is because they've balled in people, high character, high morals, held to a high standard, and therefore they hold everybody else to a high standard. We started off terrible, and I think it just went downhill, especially even as basically we kicked them off the team there at last, or whatever happened. The bad locker room there, when you have that and you just have a split locker room and you got some bad attitudes in there, you're just doomed for disaster in today's sporting worlds, right? The talent level is too equal. Like the gap between a 4-star and a 3-star, and even a 4-star and 5 stars, is not what it was 25 years ago. Just because the access to trainings and tools and all the recruiting services in today's modern age is just so much different. And so that talent gap is not at all what it was. And so now it really gets into fundamentals. Sure, you still have some freak shows that come along, right? That just, your Jeremiah Smith freshman year, right? You still have those people that come along, but arguably, right, is anybody going to sit here and tell me that he had a better sophomore year than he had a freshman year? Now, he's double team, triple team. Yeah, but so was he his freshman year too. So, it just, the locker room, the camaraderie, the me going out there, I'm going to play harder for my teammates than I play for myself. And we just didn't have people, in my opinion, playing for our teammates this year. Next and last is, and I just thought of a couple things here, is play calling. Why the heck we don't have rollouts? Why the heck Josh Heupel will not call a running back middle screen, receiver middle screen? I know we throw the little pop pass out there and kind of a little bit of screen in that aspect. But oh my gosh, we can't block people. We never call a screenplay. I think it was the very first game of this season. We called a screen, and I was watching on TV. I wasn't at the game, and I was like, "Holy crap! We just called a screenplay." And it was in the middle. It was like a little running back dump in the middle. We never called that play the rest of the season. I'm not saying that it needs to be ran every game all the time. You at least got to make teams respect it. So that prevents people from full speed rushing and sacking our quarterback, which proved all the games we lost, we couldn't block anybody. And so when you can't block anybody, guess what? You call around it. You make situations, right? When the team clearly has a great defensive line and we can't, let's roll them out. Let's call some screens. Let's make them be honest. And it's just mind-blowing to me. That was one of the things that I feel like we could have called all year long, along with the whole Josh Heupel second and long, run the ball up the middle. And granted, when it works, right, I'm cheering, and I love it. But I realize we're just trying to get to 3rd and 6, 3rd and 5. We're trying to gain 5 yards to get a manageable 3rd down. But, man, it's just, that's 75% of the time. Clock management, right? The clock management this year, and I see it not just us, right? I see it on all levels of sports. It's did you never play Madden growing up? How do you have bad clock management, of doing this? I could talk for end of halves, letting clock run down, when we get a possession. Our offense only needs 45 seconds. And towards the end of games, this bad clock management overall was just really frustrating to watch, because to me, that's a common sense. If anything, you have a guy on the sideline that literally has a sheet with all the situations and the analytics and tells you exactly what to do, and why we still messed up so many times on that, I don't know. That was very frustrating to watch, and I'm still a believer in. And Josh Heupel is good for what we have, and it'll be really interesting to get this talented new receiver group in here that can be some playmakers. And even what our receivers did this year exceeded my expectations. Considered they all had less than freaking 10, 15 catches apiece last year, or in 2024 or something like that, no production. So I am excited. what we're going to have. I think we got to hit this transfer portal hard, and we got to get another good running back or two. Getting a good seasoned, good receiver would be great. I think that'd be nice. I think we really got to get the O-line, D-lines back, and then we got to get some linebackers with some speed. I love the effort by some of our linebackers, but they're just slow as shit. And we're not in a 1990 Tennessee defense where people run at us and we run at them. We gotta be fast. So yeah, there's my opinion on why we ended up where we did in 2025 as far as the Tennessee Football Volunteers. See ya.